Sorry guys, got cut off a bit there, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish up on this second video. So basically, like I was talking about, they sealed the Warsaw Ghetto, and so they were really at this point controlling the movement of Jewish people. And then Germany invades Russia. You know, a lot of times when we talk about the Holocaust, we talk about the concentration camps. And the concentration camps and the killing centers were obviously very important, where millions of Jewish people were killed. But rarely do we talk about what Germany did in Russia. And what the Nazis did in Russia was equally as horrific, but different. Basically, what they did is, as the German, because there were a lot of Jewish communities in Eastern Europe and in Russia. And so what they did is, as the Nazi army pushed forward into Russia, mobile killing squads would follow them, and they were basically just assigned to, as they pushed through Russia, gather and kill all the Jews. And so they followed the German army, and they killed over 1 million Jews, political officials, gypsies, Roma, as they pushed through Russia. So this was another kind of horrific event that happened. In 1941, we begin to see euthanasia killings. This is information released revealing that the German healthcare professionals had been murdering adults and children with mental and physical disabilities through starvation, lethal injections, failure to treat disease, and this was about 70,000 people. And this goes back once again to this ideal German race and removing all the impurities from it. In 1941, this is when we see the Jewish badge being introduced. So this is like an example, I think, when we think about the Holocaust, we think of this star, but so much of the Holocaust and so much of the taking away of the rights and the freedoms had happened before this was even introduced. But I think what we need to recognize about the Jewish star is that it was used to segregate, stigmatize, and humiliate Jewish people. When you place something on a person that identifies them as that thing, it's easier to deny them service. It's easier to recognize them. It's easier to discriminate against them. It's easier to control and watch their movements. And I believe that, this is one of those final things that really pushed for the dehumanization and stigma and, humiliation of Jewish people. This is when we start to see deportation really begin. So Jewish people are beginning to be taken from their homes, from the ghettos, from these cities, and moved into the camps located in Eastern Europe. They used the rail system for this. The transit was horrendous. I mean, you had tons of people shoved in these cars for days on end with no breaks, no water, no food, or if it was very disgusting. And this phase was called, the liquidation of the ghettos. So moving people from the cities all over Europe, everywhere the Nazis had control of, into the killing centers and concentration camps in Eastern Europe. In 1941, the U.S. enters the war, and this is really when we start to see a push for the actual murder of the Jews. They were using a lot of Jewish people as free labor, and this is when we start to see the push for, these killing centers, the use of poison gas, and different things like that. In 1942 to 1943, Germany continues to deport Jews to these killing centers. Auschwitz opens up a second camp called Auschwitz-Birkenau, specifically for the murder of the Jewish people. And they instituted a death sentence for helping Jews, right? And so this was a big push in the Holocaust. I do want to recognize, that there were uprising and there were people who fought and resisted the Holocaust throughout its entirety. In 1942, the Allies issued a declaration that they knew that Germany was doing this to Jewish people. In 1943, we see Germany defeated at Stalingrad in Russia, which is a huge turning point in the war, pushing Germany out of Russia, the Soviet Union. In 1943, we have the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. This is when, Jewish people in this ghetto fought and hid for months against the Nazis. In 1944, we have 2 prisoners who escaped Auschwitz, and they published the Auschwitz Report, which was a public report that went out globally saying, here are the horrendous crimes being committed by the Nazis in Germany. In 1944, there was an Auschwitz-Birkenau revolt. And then there were other types of resistance as well, of German people doing small things to help Jews, of, Jewish people continuing to practice their faith and their religion, which is a form of resistance in times like this. So although the resistance was small, it's important to recognize that people did fight, And then in 1944, we have the liberation. So the U.S. and Soviet troops begin infiltrating Germany, liberating the camps as they go. And I do think it's important to recognize that this was shocking to these troops. I mean, they knew that the German people were doing horrific things, but when they actually saw these camps and they saw the state that these people were in, it was quite shocking to people. Himmler, the leader of the SS, and started to attempt to destroy the gas chambers, the crematoria, the killing camps, trying to hide the evidence of what they had done. And this is also the time of the death marches. So this is when, as the Soviets and the U.S. start pushing in, German officials try and march the soldiers to camps towards Germany. Many people die from the cold, and this is in winter, from the cold, starvation, overexertion. 1945, Hitler commits suicide, and in May, Germany surrenders. In 1945 to 1949, we have the Nuremberg Trials. We'll talk about this more when we come back from winter break, but these were 13 trials that were meant to bring the perpetrators of the Holocaust to justice. This would be party officials, high-ranking military, SS agents, doctors, lawyers, things like that. And that is all. So go ahead and make sure you filled out that timeline activity. And now what you're going to do is read that article, answer those questions, submit that worksheet.